He thought he could break the Republicans, and the Republicans broke him. But he did think that we have good policy, they have bad policy. And there's something, I don't know if it's Trump derangement or are they just crazed. They're like crazed lunatics. But, we have just great policy. We have good people. They have some good people, too. I know a lot of Democrats. They're not all crazy. They're not all. But you have some that are absolutely terrible.
I just want to bring you some news just in. The Senate has voted to approve a funding measure to reopen the federal government and end the longest shutdown in US history. Now, the bill must now go to the House for approval before it is then sent to President Donald Trump's desk to be signed. But just repeating this news just in, that the Senate has voted to approve a funding measure to reopen the federal government and end the longest shutdown in US history.
I feel badly because I've known Chuck Schumer. I knew him when he was a person who loved Israel, and now he's a Palestinian. He's become a Palestinian, and it's amazing. I've never seen a politician change so much. Also, he doesn't have, he was a pretty talented guy. He's lost his talent.
Anyway, now speaking of people who maybe get it right eventually, BBC bosses have quit sensationally after the UK public broadcaster was found to have misled its viewers by doctoring a quote from Donald Trump about the January 6 riots on the US Capitol building. Now, the actual Director General of the BBC, so basically the CEO, Tim Davie, said that he was quitting, that he was resigning in the middle of this huge scandal that involves their flagship Panorama program, which is like the ABC's Four Corners program. Tim Davie said that the decision to leave was entirely his decision, which anyone in TV knows means it was entirely not his decision. As well as another senior executive as well, News Chief Executive Deborah Turnus. She's resigned as well. And you will see what they actually did to Trump's speech, Trump's address, ahead of the January 6 Capitol riots in 2020 versus what Trump actually said. So first, let's take a look at what the BBC put to air in its, and again, flagship news and current affairs program, what is meant to be the gold standard of trustworthiness and reliability. Have a listen.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
And so not only Trump just did not say we're going to fight exactly after that bit, they got two completely different parts of the speech and spliced it together. But he also, in other parts of the speech, said it was going to be peaceful and patriotic. Now, again, I think Trump's election denialism was the worst thing he's ever done, and I didn't like what happened on January 6 one bit. But quite frankly, if you can't criticise what actually happened or deliver what actually happened as something that is not to be desirable in a democracy, and you're actually deliberately splicing it together, firstly, how do you think that no one's going to notice? And secondly, what do you think is going to happen when they do? Well, the BBC has just found out its CEO and its head of news have just been voluntarily resigned.
But as they should. And it wasn't just on the Trump speech where they've been exposed as having systemic bias. I think this was really the nail in the coffin because it was so obvious and so egregious, but also their reporting of trans issues. They apparently had a special LGBTQ desk. So any story that touched those issues had to go past the gatekeepers of LGBTQ stories, who all pushed the same pro-trans agenda on Israel and Hamas. They, of course, aired that documentary where they failed to disclose that the child narrating the documentary was actually the son of a Hamas official. So this wasn't just the only oopsies, right? It wasn't the only instance of this happening. It's systemic, it's broad-based, and I'm glad to see some justice, and people should know they cannot get away with this.
Absolutely, but they did for a long time. The BBC knew for 6 months about the doctoring of Trump's speeches. There were 2 speeches an hour apart that they spliced together. Yeah. Or perhaps one very long rambling speech.
Knowing Trump, I suspect it was one 3-hour speech.
Probably. But regardless, it was obviously not right. And I just hope that this forced introspection that the BBC now has to do is replicated here in Australia with the ABC, because this is far from a problem just with the British public broadcaster. We very much have this problem here. And Boris Johnson, the former UK Prime Minister, wrote a column in the past couple of days saying he doesn't want to pay his licensing fees anymore for the BBC. They have to pay the equivalent of $350 a year to get the BBC over there.
That's the only way you get a television, isn't it?
Can you imagine if people here had to, I know we're paying it through our taxes for this $1 billion giant that is the ABC. But if we actually had to pay $350 a year.
I wish we did have the option to pay a license, because then I'm sure a lot of Australians would simply refuse to.